Now, we run into some issues. One of the things I often talk about in the system is the choke point for the recording operation. Oftentimes, there's almost always a choke point in the system, meaning something that is not fast enough to be able to work the process. In this instance, we can see a couple of those here that can essentially stand as our choke points. But let's work back from the computer itself to some of the most important ones. So we have the CPU, how many cores it has, how fast that CPU can run, right? How many gigahertz of processor that processor can run is important. Additionally, we have how much RAM, that random access memory, that short-term memory, getting information to and from the hard drives, going from short-term to long-term storage and being processed is a very important piece. Additionally, especially for a lot of laptops, and it's the real difference between a laptop and a desktop, is the graphics ability. Sometimes the graphics has its own independent CPU and its own independent RAM. But at times, especially when we're using mobile devices or laptops, those graphic cards are actually pulling from the CPU usage, the main CPU usage, and they're draining CPU, and they're pulling from the localized RAM, so they're draining RAM. So instead of being able to use your full CPU and RAM usage while you're working on recording audio or video or editing or processing, if you're running a bunch of graphics instances, maybe multiple screens and such, if your device doesn't have these isolated or exclusive to the graphics card, you're actually drawing away from those main resources. So sometimes, especially on a laptop, the most simplistic way to get the most processing, if it doesn't have dedicated RAM or CPU for graphics at a high enough level, is to just use a single display and as few peripherals as possible in order to get that job done.